Leave the camera alone. Leave it alone. You can stay in here. Just leave it alone. Ugh, little monsters. Get away from the sharp thing. Alrighty, so this is not the most beautiful axe handle in the world, but it's smooth enough to be functional, and I can finish it and make it nicer later. And in fact, I'm probably going to be, if it lasts long enough, I'll be smoothing down the neck and the handle a little bit at a time as I work with it, kind of get it where I want it. But I kind of want to finish this up and show you guys how to do this part, because it's an important, crucial step. Now, when I lined up to get this thing square, I was basically measuring from the top of my axe. Actually, maybe not, because that's not even close. But usually the bottom eyelet on your axe is going to be smaller than the top one. Well, that is where I was measuring from. I'll be darned, I did it right. So for fitment, what you want to do, we're basically going to be removing like a little bit of material at a time, trying to keep the profile straight as possible, with a little slight flare in it, because you don't want it to go on easy. But on this axe head especially, this doesn't, some of them kind of squeeze in the middle a little bit and pinch, but this one's almost a straight cone shape, so it just gets bigger at the top than it does at the bottom. So as long as this bottom will slide on, then you can get it down, but you don't necessarily want it to slide on easy. You just want it to go on there. So I can see I'm going to need to remove about a 1/16 of an inch from each side already, and I just want to kind of try and match the shape and the profile. So this was all done with the rasp. I'm going to start with the rasp. I may actually go back and grab a file for some of the finer tuning, but we'll use a rasp to get us close just because it's quick. And then of course we still got Mr. Knife here if we have any little troubly spots. And just go down there and shave those off very, very carefully. And this is the process with this. I mean, it's just going back and forth. That's pretty close. Still gotta pull a smidge off. And I don't really know any way to explain how to do this per se. Just, I mean, you should pretty much get it on there and line it up the best you can. If you can with it. Find the spot where it's binding and just grind that sucker off. What I can say is you do want to get the whole flat. Like, you don't want to concentrate just on this top edge and getting it right. Just do the whole flat whenever you do it, and that'll kind of straighten out any inconsistencies as well that you have. Little bubble here at the back. A little bit of a bulge up here actually. So I think if I just take off this rail, I'll be probably good enough. Not sure how much you missed. My camera likes to just quit every once in a while. It's like, I think I've recorded enough. Someone must have left me on mistakenly. But we were getting this guy pretty darn close to being ready here. He's fitting pretty darn tight. And I'm kind of liking this. And the more I do this, like, the better I sort of get at it a little bit. It definitely wasn't a learn this in a day and then go out and be straight to being an expert or anything. So I'm about halfway up the haft right now with light taps. I'm just trying to get rid of any potential problem areas later without loosening my grip on the thing. So, and that side looks like it's okay. looking at it, let's see any potential problems on the front. Even though there is a little bit of a bite mark right there, it's not an issue, I don't think. Go ahead and just trim down these sides a little bit. Now where it seats, I still want it to be super, super tight, so it makes this a little tricky because you got to kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another, splitting hairs the whole time, and cut this upside down. Right? Yeah. That's actually slipping on there now, so that's good. And I believe I'll be able to weasel that sucker on there. Not too bad. And we are, I don't know if you can see that, he's almost poking out. So I mean, if I take care of this little bite at the front, and I got a nice little profile all the way around the edge here. That's really difficult to do, so if this is your first time hafting an axe, I promise you this is not 100% essential. It makes it nicer and less likely to slip off, and you'll have less problems. But getting that nice even profile all the way around is definitely, as long as the bit's still aligned, is a good thing. And like I said, when you, like, this axe angles down a little bit actually, and so the bit will actually be lined up with this little base over here, and that's what you want. That way when you drop into a log, like, your bit's the same place that your hand is, and it's in line with your eye, and there's all kinds of theory on that. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it does look like I do need to take a little bit, just the tiniest amount, and kind of smooth and shape this guy out. So go ahead and cut that little niblet off. Alrighty, now the fun part. There we go. Now it's best to do this in a bench vise. Yes, my workstation is a mess. Yes. Oh yes. I am smoking, and yes, my phone is probably going to interrupt this like 18 times, but that's cool. So I've got another axe head here that I've been kind of shaping. This will be for a big felling axe, but it's going to need a much larger handle, and as you can tell, probably quite a bit of work before I put an edge on it. Filing these things by hand takes a little while. Anyways, back to our current work in progress. This little guy, I'm going to try and cut from over here a little bit because I can brace myself against the little countertoppy, but this is really set up to cut the other direction. And what I want to do is just get lined up here and just nice and smooth. Now you may wonder about my hand being braced against the side of the saw here. That is a technique. As long as you keep it away from the little teeth, you'll be alright, but you can kind of use your hand as a sort of a miter box. As long as you're careful, don't go cut your fingers off and then tell your mom that I'm responsible for it. Just with real light strokes until you can get a nice line cut straight across here. You could also brace this with something like a piece of pipe or whatever. I just prefer to do it this way. And boom, just like that, I've started a kerf. Okay? So now this kerf is going to be where our wedge is going to go, and it needs to run down. It's going to need to run down about 2/3 of the way to where the axe is going to seat. And usually my axe is going to seat a little bit lower, so I've got more wiggle room. So I basically, where it was seated when we stopped, I think about right there, is probably about to where I'm going to go. I like running these as deep as I can get them, just because it gives me a little more wiggle room. Because if that wedge bottoms out and you're not tight, then you're kind of, you know, up a creek without a certain kind of way to get yourself back out of the thing. So So, got this guy cut. I'm a little lower. Most people will go 2/3 of their axe head to like right there. When I seat my axe, it's going to be seated probably at least 1/4 of an inch lower. So I want to make sure I'm down far enough that I can still dig in. So what I'll do is I'll get my minimum set maybe 1/4 of an inch above the bottom of the axe head. This gives me maximum wiggle room to play with. I don't know if that's the best strategy, but I definitely got the most room to drive a wedge in there without it bottoming out ever. And I'm trying to get my wedges cut like more and more narrow, so this is good. Another thing you can do if you really want to is you can clamp this top together a little bit like this, and then just run your saw down there again, and this will give kind of a tapered effect to the top when you release the clamp. So you'd be clamping these together and then sawing on that clamp, so you're basically taking off just a little more of a nibble, and it gives you like a tapered kind of thing. I'm not doing all that stuff though. I am just going to, I was going to say hit it with a file, but I don't have a file handy, so I'll just use the axe head and scrape off some of this excess. And then we'll get this choker mounted up. Okay, now to mount an axe head onto an axe, first of all, it's going to be turned around the right direction. You're going to slide that joker on there, and you'll notice it goes on a lot easier once that kerf is cut. Just pound him in there nice and good. And then, contrary to popular belief, or at least some people's belief, some old timers still do this, is they will hammer down on the axe head itself. There's no real need to do that. You just get you a nice wooden mallet and pop the bottom of the handle, and it should mount up on there on its own. Almost there. If it doesn't, you probably got your nibble too loose, but you can see we are in there. So it's almost flush with the top, and like I said, I'm going to try to get that extra 1/4 of an inch. I'm also going to check my bit alignment, which is still pretty close. I'm not an expert on bit alignment, so I'm not going to comment on that portion, but... And now this is when you really want to drive it home. Just, I mean, you shouldn't have to break the handle to get it on there. But you do got to give it a pretty stiff little whack. And it is not wanting to seat much further than that, so I've got a nice tight fit on this guy for sure. I am getting a little nibble here, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that guy. And it's kind of getting grabby around the edges too. I can't believe how nice that fits. I've never had one fit that nice. Anyways. That in there, and I was wrong. I'm not sticking out 1/4 of an inch. I've got an 1/8 of an inch, and that is all she's going to give me. Ugh. And that joker is on there tight as a drum. Okay, now this is one way that you know my axe does not have the little pinch in the middle of it like some axes do, is because usually these tops will kind of squeeze together a little bit, and you actually have to open them up a little to get in there. Actually, while we're on that subject, to make driving the wedge in easier, especially if it does close like that, you can run a piece of sandpaper down here to just kind of chamfer that inside edge. That way when you put your wedge in, good to go. I'm going to pop this a couple more times just to be sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of walnut here that's been laying around in my shed forever, and I'm going to bust me a little piece off of the smooth side, and it's going to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's got to be definitely wider than the kerf of your thing, maybe closer to 1/2 an inch, 3/16, something like that. Yeah, that cracked. That's no good. So apparently this is not going to take quite as long as I had thought, though it is getting gradually darker and darker. But C-clamps make a huge difference if you're doing this kind of thing. So basically, I messed up the first one. I busted it in half while I was doing this, just because I got it too thin. But anyways, this one I took a little more care getting the block out, and I'm just basically trying to smooth each side up a little bit, and then I'll get the kerf as narrow as it needs to be. Maybe being a little rough on this thing, but yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm gonna get this smoothed out and I'll get back to you. My battery's about dead. Alright, my battery power is about to die, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. If it cuts out before I get to it and I don't do a follow-up, don't forget to subscribe if you like this kind of thing, and, you know, click the little heart button and do all that fancy stuff, help a brother out. Anyways, this is my wedge, finished. For lubrication, to help guide the wedge in and to make sure it's secure when it's finished, I have some wood glue. I recommend Titebond 2 or Titebond 3 just because they're somewhat water resistant, but let's be honest, how often are you going to leave your brand new axe laying out in the freaking rain? And if you are, then, you know, you deal with the consequences of that. But theoretically, you shouldn't need any glue at all to make this stick. I just like using it because it's just become a habit. So I'm going to put this on and then bury this guy in there. And now I've got glue all over my hands. Woo! And this is sometimes an annoying part. Sometimes it's super easy. It's looking so far like it's going to be pretty easy. So make sure your axe is all the way hafted on. Take your little wedge. And I'm going to turn him this direction. And I'm just going to slot him in from the back. And then kind of lean him to the front to try and get it wedged in there exactly the way that I want. I'm going to take my handy dandy hatchet and just tap it. Now this is the part that'll be frustrating, because you'll go to start tapping on this thing and then all of a sudden it'll want to like jump back out and do all kinds of crazy stuff, but this one's being pretty well behaved, so it's pretty good. Now what you want to drive it home, I apologize for the wind, I have no control over the weather, contrary to popular belief, is a block of wood or something, just to prevent this from breaking into a million pieces and splintering out. And you can kind of start getting a couple good whacks on him. I may have made this a little too wide, so, but what you do want to check for is to make sure your axe isn't backing out. That would not be good. And once you've got him started in there pretty good, what I like to do is turn it upside down and just beat it on a block of wood like this. You know, put the block of wood on something solid and just hammer down on it and really, really drive it home that way, because that seems to be the most efficient way to do it. And I think that's about all I'm going to get, which kind of sucks, but I don't know, it's in there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this in for a little while, just see how it goes. It's really not going anywhere, and once that glue sets up, like, this guy should be fairly solid. Now I want to dig into something. Ooh, look, a log. Still a lot of hand shock, a lot more than what I like, but for now that'll work. So it's a working axe, and hopefully this handle lasts a little while this time, and you guys will be seeing a lot of this axe when I start my cordwood challenge for the year. It may look a little different, but once I get it shaped the way that I want it, I'll put it a good solid coat of sunflower oil on it. You can use tongue oil or any kind of oil you want, and it should be good to go. So that's it. axe handle in one day. Don't forget to subscribe and like and tell your friends about this video and share it and all that happy stuff. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.